The night billionaire Ash Norrington got locked out of his own penthouse, he was barefoot, furious, and holding a half-eaten chocolate croissant. It was just past midnight when the heavy penthouse door slammed shut behind him and the smart lock blinked red. He cursed under his breath, realizing the system had just updated an hour ago. His biometric access hadn't synced yet. His phone? Left inside. His wallet? Inside. His dignity? Hanging by a thread along with his linen pajama pants and the ridiculous robe his assistant had gifted him as a joke. He was a man who owned 3 tech companies, a private jet, and a villa in Lake Como. Yet here he was, standing like an idiot in the hallway of the top floor of a Manhattan skyscraper, locked out, croissant in hand, robe flapping in the air-conditioned hallway breeze. Then he heard the soft click of a nearby apartment door opening. "Are you okay?" Ash turned, expecting a nosy neighbor or worse, a paparazzi prank. Instead, he saw her. She looked like she belonged in a different building entirely. Barefoot, wearing leggings and an oversized t-shirt with a faded band logo. Her brown curls pulled into a messy bun. She held a pint of ice cream and looked at him like he was a raccoon caught rifling through garbage. "I'm locked out," he said, straightening his spine and adjusting his robe like it was a 3-piece suit. She blinked. "In a robe." He gestured to the door. Smart lock glitched. "It happens." She nodded slowly, skeptical. "Right? That's a normal billionaire problem." He froze. "What makes you think I'm a billionaire?" "You're barefoot in a hallway that costs more per square foot than my entire student loan debt," she said plainly. "And you're eating a croissant that smells suspiciously like it came from La Petite Fleur." Ash stared. "You know that bakery?" "I work there," she said, stepping fully into the hallway now. "Or I did. Got fired this morning." He looked at her again. Really looked. There was exhaustion in her eyes, but something fierce too. Her voice was calm, but her hands trembled slightly around the ice cream. "You okay?" he asked without thinking. She blinked, surprised. "You're the one locked out of your own penthouse." "I asked first." She cleared her throat. "I've been better." Before he could say more, she sighed and tilted her head. "Come in. You can wait inside while you figure out how to get back into your palace. I'll even let you use my landline. Like it's 1998. Ash hesitated. He didn't go into other people's apartments, especially not strangers. But then again, he didn't usually get locked out in pajamas either. "I'm Ash," he said. "Vera," she replied, stepping aside to let him in. Her apartment was small, cozy. A stark contrast to the cold, minimalist luxury of his own place. There were books stacked in corners, a record player spinning a soft jazz track, and mismatched furniture that somehow worked together. It smelled like vanilla and cinnamon. He sat carefully on the edge of her couch while Vera handed him a phone. "Do you want coffee?" she asked, heading to the kitchen. "It's after midnight." She shrugged. "I wasn't sleeping anyway." He watched her move around, pouring coffee like they weren't total strangers. Like this was normal. Ash called his building manager voicemail. Then his assistant also voicemail. He hung up, sighing. "No luck." He shook his head. "They're probably asleep." Vera handed him a mug. "Then you're stuck with me." He took it, touched by the gesture. "Thanks for not calling security." She arched a brow. "I thought about it. But you didn't look dangerous. Just..." Her eyes scanned him. "Ridiculous." He laughed. "I'll take that." They sat in silence for a while, sipping coffee. The quiet wasn't awkward. It was calm. "So, why'd you get fired?" he asked after a minute. Vera didn't flinch. "I told the owner he was underpaying the staff and cutting corners on ingredients. He didn't like that." Ash blinked. "That's bold." "I'm tired of being quiet," she said simply. "Even if it costs me." He stared at her, something tightening in his chest. "Good for you." She looked over, surprised again. "Seriously?" He nodded. "The world needs more people willing to speak up." There was another beat of silence. Then she smiled, a little softer this time. "You don't seem like a billionaire," she said. "Is that a compliment or an insult?" She laughed. "I'll let you decide." He leaned back on the couch, watching her out of the corner of his eye. There was something grounding about her. Real. No pretense. No agenda. Just Vera. They stayed up for another hour, talking about everything and nothing. She told him about her dream of opening her own bakery one day. He told her about how exhausting it got pretending to be the version of himself the world expected. Eventually she yawned. "You can crash here," she offered. "The couch is not bad." Ash hesitated. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "I mean, I'm not going to let you sleep barefoot in the hallway." He smiled. "You're kind of amazing, you know that?" Vera rolled her eyes, but her cheeks flushed. She disappeared into the bedroom and came back with a blanket and pillow. Ash laid back, the couch creaking slightly under his weight. She stood over him for a moment, then whispered, "Good night, Ash." "Good night, Vera." As she turned off the lights and walked away, Ash stared at the ceiling. He'd been locked out of his penthouse, and somehow it led him into the one place he didn't know he'd been searching for, someone's honest, messy, beautiful life. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't want to leave. Ash woke to the scent of something warm and sweet wafting through the air. He blinked against the unfamiliar light filtering through the sheer curtains. The couch beneath him was narrow, but someone had tucked the blanket tightly around his body like a makeshift cocoon. For a man used to waking up in Egyptian cotton sheets and remote-controlled blackout blinds, this was oddly comforting. He sat up slowly, stretching his neck. The apartment was quiet except for a soft clatter from the kitchen. Vera stood near the stove, her hair now loosely braided, wearing a navy hoodie that looked about 2 sizes too big. She didn't glance over when he shifted. "You talk in your sleep," she said, stirring something in a small pot. Something about a jet being late and someone named Claude needing to get his act together. Ash dragged a hand through his hair. "That sounds about right." She finally turned to look at him. "You hungry?" He hesitated. "I should probably go check if anyone's awake to let me back into my place." Vera pointed a wooden spoon toward the windows. "Unless you've installed helicopter access, you're not going anywhere for a while." He followed her gaze to the window. A dense gray fog had rolled in, swallowing the skyline. Rain tapped rhythmically against the glass. "Power flickered earlier," she added. "Elevators are out until they reset the grid." Ash exhaled slowly. "Perfect." Vera turned back to the stove, unfazed. "So, oatmeal or toast?" He stood, stretching again. "I don't usually eat breakfast." She gave him a sidelong glance. "You're in my apartment. You're eating something." He accepted the bowl she handed him without protest. The oatmeal was topped with a generous swirl of maple syrup and a few slices of banana. He took a spoonful and blinked at her. "I wasn't expecting this to be good." "Charming," she muttered, pulling out a chipped mug and pouring herself tea. She didn't offer him any. He didn't ask. They ate in silence for a few moments. Not tense. Just 2 people stuck in limbo. Ash set his bowl aside. "What's with the hoodie? You look like you've been swallowed by fabric." "My ex left it behind when he moved out," she said casually. "I kept it. Petty maybe, but it's soft so." He blinked. "Moved out recently?" She gave a short laugh. 2 years ago. I just haven't found a better hoodie." Ash leaned back, watching her. "You don't seem bitter." "Oh, I was, for a while. Then I realized being angry was exhausting. Now I just remember that I'm better off." He nodded, impressed. "You're very self-aware." Vera arched a brow. "That your polite way of saying I sound like someone who reads too many self-help books?" "I wasn't being sarcastic," he said, then softened. "But yeah, maybe just a little." She grinned. "I'll take it." The rain outside intensified, drumming a steady rhythm against the windows. Vera cleaned up without asking for help. Ash stood awkwardly, unsure whether to offer or stay out of the way. "You're not used to being in other people's spaces, are you?" she asked, rinsing the bowls. "Not like this," he admitted. "I usually have meetings lined up by now. Calls. Deadlines." She dried her hands and leaned against the counter. "Well, you're off the grid. No phone. No staff. No schedule. Just me, bad weather, and an endless supply of tea." Ash crossed his arms. "What do people like you do when the world slows down?" Vera stared at him for a beat. "People like me? Not what I meant," he said quickly. I've never had to stop moving. I don't know what to do with stillness." "You sit in it," she said. "And you listen." "To what?" "Whatever you've been trying to drown out." Ash didn't reply. She didn't push. Instead, she walked to a shelf and pulled down a deck of cards. Poker. I don't gamble. Then it's a good thing we're not betting anything, she said, shuffling expertly. I play for conversation. He raised a brow. That's a new one. She dealt them each 5 cards. Every round you lose, you answer a question. Ash narrowed his eyes. What do I get if I win? You get to ask. He considered, then sat down opposite her. They played 4 rounds. He lost 3. What's the one thing you'd do if money wasn't an issue, she asked after her second win. He hesitated. Disappear. She didn't laugh. From what? From the noise. The expectations. The headlines. Vera tilted her head. You think vanishing would solve anything? No, he said. But sometimes it feels like the only option. She played another round. Won again. What's the worst thing you've ever said to someone you cared about? Ash looked away. I told my father I wished he'd stayed dead. Vera blinked but said nothing. He faked a heart attack to get me to cancel a product launch. Said it was the only way I'd come home. She placed her cards face down. That's awful. He wanted control. I wanted autonomy. It got ugly. Vera didn't respond. Just reached across the table and placed a hand lightly over his. Not to console. Just to acknowledge. They played again. He finally won. He leaned forward. Why did you stay with someone who left his hoodie behind? She smiled faintly. Because I thought if I loved him hard enough, he'd stay. Turns out love isn't loud enough to drown out someone's silence. Ash nodded. That's a good line. It's a true one. The rain finally began to slow, the city outside still muted by fog. Ash glanced at the window, then back at her. I should get back upstairs. Vera leaned back. You could. Or we could pretend the world hasn't started spinning yet. He hesitated. You're not worried I'll overstay my welcome? You're not the only one who needed to pause. He stood slowly. What do you do when the pause ends? I don't know, she said. But maybe you don't have to figure it out alone. Ash stared at her. Something deep and unfamiliar stirred in his chest. Would you come up with me? He asked. She blinked. To your penthouse? He nodded. There's something about your quiet that I want to keep. Vera held his gaze. I'm not something to collect, Ash. I know. He didn't say more. She didn't move. The silence stretched until the elevator dinged in the hallway, signaling the building's systems were back online. Ash looked at the door. Then at her. I won't ask twice, he said. You didn't even ask properly the first time. He smiled. Vera, will you come upstairs with me? She stood, arms crossed, then walked to the door and opened it. I'll come up, she said. But only because I want to see if your place actually has a soul. Ash followed her, something in his chest loosening. He'd come into her apartment a stranger. He was leaving with something he couldn't name but wasn't willing to let go of. Vera didn't flinch when the elevator doors opened to reveal polished marble floors and a hallway so quiet it seemed to hold its breath. She stepped out ahead of Ash, her shoulders back, not bothering to admire the view from the floor-to-ceiling windows or the gleaming chrome finishes. Ash unlocked the penthouse with his freshly reset biometric panel. The door hissed open, revealing the cavernous space beyond, sunlight now pouring through the glass walls, illuminating the sleek lines of Italian furniture and a living room that could host a small orchestra. Vera paused just inside. This place feels sterile. Ash glanced around. It's supposed to be minimalist. It's missing fingerprints. Everything looks like it's afraid to be touched. He shut the door behind them and watched her walk slowly into the room. She didn't trail her fingers along the countertop or gape at the abstract art. She studied the space like it was a puzzle with pieces missing. You live here alone? She asked. He nodded. No family pictures. No books. No. Anything, really. I keep things simple, he said. Vera turned to face him. You keep things empty. Ash exhaled, walked to the kitchen island and poured a glass of water. I've had people in and out. It just never made sense to fill it up with things that wouldn't last. Things don't have to last to matter. He looked up sharply. She wasn't judging. Just observing. That was somehow worse. Would you like a tour? He offered. She tilted her head. Sure. Show me what $1 billion life looks like. He led her through the penthouse past the private screening room, the climate-controlled wine vault, the atrium garden with orchids flown in from Singapore. She didn't ask questions. She didn't gush or marvel. She simply noted things with a quiet, curious gaze. When they reached his study, she paused at the massive desk overlooking the skyline. What's this? She asked, gesturing to a locked drawer. Just contracts. Prototypes. Things I don't want misplaced. What about personal things? Ash hesitated. There's a safe. But I don't open it often. Why not? He walked to the far wall where a hidden panel clicked open at his touch. Inside, a small steel door. He keyed in the code without glancing at the numbers. The safe opened with a whisper. Inside were only 3 items. A silver chess piece, a yellowed envelope, and an old photograph of a boy with a missing front tooth, standing next to a man who looked like a colder version of Ash himself. Vera stepped closer, but didn't reach in. That's your father? He nodded. You look like you're bracing for a punch. I always do when I look at that photo. She studied it a moment longer, then turned away, giving him the space to close the door. They walked back into the main room without speaking. You've built a fortress, she said at last. That's the point. But you still got locked out. Ash laughed once, hollow. Yeah, life's got a sense of humor. Vera crossed to the window and looked down at the city. You ever walk among them? He followed her gaze. The public? Occasionally. With security. No, I mean really walk. No assistance. No tinted windows. Just you and your thoughts. Not recently. You should try it. Might remind you that you're human. Ash leaned against the glass. You think I've forgotten? I think you've buried it so deep you forgot where you left it. He turned to her. Why are you here, Vera? You asked me to come. And you said yes. She met his gaze. Because I wanted to see if the man who crashed on my couch was real. And? I haven't decided yet. He didn't respond. Instead, he walked to a control panel and pressed a button. One of the walls shifted, revealing an elevator with a private key slot. Where does that go? She asked. Garage. He pulled a key from his pocket and held it up. You want to go somewhere? She hesitated. Where? I don't know. Somewhere with fingerprints. She held his gaze for a long moment. Fine, she said. But I'm not changing out of this hoodie. They descended in silence. His driver stood ready beside a sleek black McLaren, but Ash waved him off. I'm driving. The man blinked once, nodded, and stepped back. Vera slid into the passenger seat without comment. Ash started the engine, and the car purred to life like a tamed predator. He navigated the city streets without the usual aggression of Manhattan drivers, a man who wasn't in a rush for the first time in weeks. They drove through neighborhoods Vera knew well, places with chipped paint, overflowing flower boxes, and shop windows cluttered with hand-lettered signs. Ash pulled over in front of a small building with a flickering neon sign that read, Marlowe's. What is this place? He asked. Best grilled cheese in the city, Vera said, already unbuckling. They stepped inside, and the scent of butter and melted cheddar wrapped around them like a warm coat. The floor squeaked. The ceiling fan wobbled. The owner behind the counter shouted her name when he saw her. Back already? You bring royalty? Ash raised an eyebrow. Vera laughed. He's new to the concept of actual food. They took a booth near the window. Vera ordered without asking him 2 grilled cheeses and a bowl of tomato soup to share. Ash didn't object. When the food arrived, he stared at the plate like it was a foreign artifact. You're not going to insult it, are you? And she warned. He took a bite, chewed, then slowly nodded. Okay, that's dangerously good. Told you. They ate in companionable silence, dipping sandwiches in soup, watching the rain ease into a soft drizzle outside. Ash set his sandwich down. You're not like anyone I've met before. Is that a compliment or a warning? It's a wake-up call. She looked at him, eyes steady. What are you waking up from? He hesitated. The illusion that success means anything if you have to keep everyone out to hold onto it. That's not an illusion, she said. That's fear. Ash leaned back. You're right. I'm terrified. Of what? Letting someone in, and realizing I've built a life with no room for them. Vera folded her napkin, then picked up her half of the soup. Then maybe it's time to start knocking down walls. He stared at her, and something inside him cracked quietly, but irreversibly. She didn't ask for anything. She didn't try to impress him. She offered clarity in a world that spoke in static. He reached across the table, resting his hand over hers. I don't know what this is, he said. But I don't want it to be temporary. Vera didn't pull away. Then don't treat it like it already has an expiration date. Outside, the clouds shifted, and a thin ribbon of sunlight spilled across the pavement. Ash glanced out the window, then back at her. Come with me to Paris. Vera blinked. What? I have a property there. A restored bakery from the 19th century. I was going to sell it. Maybe I won't. You're inviting me to Paris. Just like that. I'm not asking you to move in. I'm asking you to explore something with me. Something real. She looked down at their hands. I'm not a project, Ash. I know. I'm not someone you can fix or rescue or buy. I don't want to fix you. I want to learn from you. She drew in a slow breath, then exhaled. I'll think about it. He smiled. That's more than I expected. She smiled back. Good. Because I don't do anything on anyone's timetable but mine. And just like that, something between them shifted. No grand declarations, no cinematic crescendos. Just two people sitting in a booth, a little less alone than they were yesterday, and maybe, just maybe, brave enough to try again tomorrow. Paris was colder than Vera expected, the wind curling off the Seine with a bite that slipped past her sleeves. But she didn't complain. The city pulsed with a quiet rhythm, alive in a way that felt older than time. She stood in front of the building Ash had flown her to see, its stone facade softened by age, the iron balcony railings tangled with dormant ivy. Ash unlocked the weather-worn door with a brass key and pushed it open. Inside, the scent of flower and aged wood lingered like the faint memory of something once beloved. She stepped into the space and turned in a slow circle. The bakery had been stripped bare, no counters, no shelves, but light streamed through tall windows, catching dust motes in golden patterns across the tiled floor. I thought it would feel different, Vera said quietly. Ash set the keys on the sill beside him. Because it's empty? Because it's waiting. He leaned against the wall, watching her. You think places can wait? I think they remember, she said. Even when no one else does. Ash didn't answer right away. The last time someone used this oven, Napoleon was still a name whispered in fear. That explains the ghost. He raised an eyebrow. She shrugged. Old places always come with stories. You just have to listen hard enough. Ash crossed to where she stood beneath one of the exposed beams. What do you hear? Too many hands working too fast. A little girl humming. Dough rising in the dark. Someone crying in the back room. He looked at her like she'd spoken another language, one he hadn't realized he'd always wanted to learn. I didn't bring you here to impress you, he said. I know. I brought you here because I couldn't stop picturing you behind that counter. She turned to face him, arms crossed loosely over her chest. You think I belong in a place like this? I think a place like this belongs to someone who knows how to make it breathe again. Vera didn't speak. She walked toward the back, where a crumbling arch led to what must have once been a pantry. She ran her fingers along the stone, then turned back. You'd let me have it? I'd help you build it. I don't want help. I know. She paced slowly, the sound of her boots echoing softly off the walls. I don't want to be another woman you give something to. Then don't take it. He stepped forward, voice lower now. Build it. Earn it. Just don't do it alone. Vera stared at him, her expression unreadable. What happens when you get bored of this? I won't. You say that now. I know myself better than I used to. Vera moved past him, brushing his sleeve with her hand. I'm not a project, Ash. You already told me that. I'm not going to be a chapter in your redemption story. You're the whole book. She stopped walking. I mean it, he said. You scare the hell out of me. And I don't want to go back to who I was before you opened that door. Vera turned slowly. Say that again. Which part? The last part. He stepped toward her until there was barely space between them. I don't want to go back to who I was. She exhaled like she'd been holding something in for days. Then learn how to stay. I'm trying. Try harder. He took her face in his hands. Tell me what you need. I need to know that when everything gets quiet again, you won't disappear into your walls. I'll take them down. All of them. Even the ones I forgot I built. She searched his face for something he didn't try to hide. Then she kissed him. It wasn't slow or hesitant. It was a collision, fire meeting ice, grief meeting hope. His hands slid to her waist. She curled her fingers into his collar. When they finally pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his chest. I should hate how much I want this, she whispered. But you don't. No. Then let's stop waiting for the other shoe to drop. I've lived my whole life watching shoes drop. Then let's throw them out the damn window. She laughed, and it broke something wide open inside him. Later, they sat on the floor, legs tangled, backs against the wall, watching the sun drift lower through the dusty windows. Ash pulled out a folded piece of paper from his coat pocket. What's that? I had my lawyers draw up a proposal. She narrowed her eyes. If that's a contract. It's not. He handed it to her. She unfolded it slowly. At the top it read, Partnership Agreement, Norrington and Vera, Artisan Bakery. She stared at the title, then scanned the rest. My name's first. You're the one who'll make the magic, he said. There were no dollar amounts. No legal jargon. Just promises his commitment to fund the renovation, her full creative control, joint ownership after 2 years. It was everything she hadn't dared imagine someone would ever offer her. How do I know you won't pull out? Because I've never wanted anything this badly. She folded the paper again carefully. I'm not saying yes. I wouldn't believe you if you did. But I'm not saying no. Good. Because I already hired an architect. She rolled her eyes. You're impossible. I'm yours. She shook her head, but she didn't hand the paper back. They returned to New York a week later, the city welcoming them with its usual chaos. Ash didn't retreat to his schedule. He canceled meetings. Said no to 3 new deals. He showed up at Vera's apartment with groceries. Took her to a tiny jazz club in Harlem. Walked beside her without bodyguards, without plans. He listened. And she let him in. Slowly. Carefully. She let him see the notebooks where she sketched pastries and scribbled recipes. She let him trace the scar on her wrist from a burn she got in culinary school. She let him hold her when the world felt too loud. One night, weeks later, he found her standing on the penthouse balcony, staring out at the city lights. Are you scared? He asked. Terrified. Me too. She looked at him, the wind tugging loose strands of her hair. But I'd rather be terrified with you, she said, than safe without you. Ash reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. She froze. I'm not asking you to marry me, he said. Not yet. Then what is that? He opened it. Inside was a simple gold ring, no diamond, no sparkle. Just an engraving on the inside. She took it, turned it over. It read, no walls. No exits. I want you to wear it when you're ready, he said. Not as a promise. As a reminder. She slid it onto her finger slowly. You're serious about this? I've never been more serious. She stepped into his arms. You're not allowed to vanish. Not ever. I won't, he said against her hair. Not from you. That spring, the bakery in Paris reopened. Its windows glowing with warm light and the scent of fresh pain au chocolate drifting onto the street. Tourists lined up before dawn. Locals swore it tasted like memory. And behind the counter, Vera worked beside Ash in flower-streaked aprons. Their rhythm seamless. They didn't need to explain how they got there. The city already knew. After all, some stories didn't need to be loud. They just needed to be real. And this one, it began with a billionaire locked out of his penthouse. And a woman who opened her door. The sound of metal scraping against marble echoed through the freshly refurbished Parisian bakery as Ash adjusted the final brass plaque on the front door. It gleamed in the early morning light, catching the reflection of the street's cobblestones in its polished surface. Vera stepped out from inside, wiping her hands on a striped linen apron, her curls pinned up with a pencil. She stopped beside him, reading the elegant inscription aloud. Norrington and Vera. He stood back, arms folded, watching her face. What do you think? He asked. I think if you'd told me 2 months ago my name would be on the front of a bakery in the Marais district, I'd have told you to check your blood sugar. But you like it, he said. She tilted her head. I like that it's not just a sign. It's a stake in the ground. Proof we didn't just talk about something. We built it. Ash reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. The final permits came through this morning. We're officially cleared for food service and sidewalk seating. She raised an eyebrow. You make bureaucracy sound like a love letter. It is, in a way. I fought the city council in French for you. That explains the swearing in your sleep. He leaned in. You weren't supposed to hear that. I hear everything when I'm working the dough bench. You mutter like a man possessed. Ash laughed, the sound low and easy. That's because I am. Vera stepped back inside ahead of him, glancing at the freshly painted beams and the new copper espresso machine gleaming behind the counter. The space was warm, now alive, infused with the scent of butter and citrus zest. The walls bore framed sketches of pastry concepts, and the menu board still had chalk smudges from her last round of edits. She walked behind the counter, pulled out a tray of still warm almond croissants, and set them in the case. Ash followed her with 2 mugs of coffee, setting one beside her elbow. "Big day," he said. She didn't answer right away. Then, without looking up, she said, "You're not scared anymore." It wasn't a question. "No," he replied. "Are you?" "I am," she said. "But not of failure." "What then?" "Of getting used to this. Of letting it mean something." Ash placed his hand over hers on the counter. "It already does." The bell above the door rang faintly as sunlight streamed through the windows. A couple wandered in, peeking at the pastry case. Vera excused herself with a glance and greeted them in French, guiding them through the menu with a confidence that hadn't been there 3 weeks ago. Ash watched her, how she moved, how she listened, how she smiled when the couple complimented the lemon tart she'd spent days perfecting. She wasn't adapting to this life. She was claiming it. When the couple left, Vera returned to him, wiping her hands on her apron again. "You didn't say anything about the soft opening tomorrow," she said. "I thought you'd want to keep it small." "I did. But now I kind of want everyone to see it." Ash smiled. "Then we'll open the doors wide." She gave him a look. "Not too wide. I still don't trust that oven at full capacity." Later, they sat on the rooftop above the bakery, bundled in wool blankets, a bottle of wine between them. The sky over Paris was painted in strokes of lavender and gold, the Eiffel Tower visible in the distance, its lights just beginning to flicker on. Ash leaned against the chimney, his legs stretched out in front of him. "I never told you why I really kept this place," he said. Vera poured them each another glass. "You said you were going to sell it." "I lied." She glanced at him. "I bought it 3 years ago," he continued. "Before the IPO. Before the press started following me. I came here one weekend and had a croissant from this bakery. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. The woman who ran it said her great-grandfather built the oven by hand. She gave me a second one for free because I looked like I needed it." Vera swirled her glass slowly. "So you bought it out of nostalgia?" "I bought it because I wanted to remember what it felt like to be seen as a person. And now, I want to be that person again. With you." She set her glass down. "You're not the only one who's changed," she said. "I used to think being alone was safer, that needing someone was a weakness. And now I know it's a choice. And I'm choosing you." Ash stood suddenly, brushing off his hands, then reached into his coat pocket. Vera blinked as he dropped to one knee in front of her. "You said you weren't ready for a ring," he said. Her heart stopped. "But I'm not asking for someday anymore. I'm asking for now." He opened the box. Inside was a ring unlike any she'd ever seen, simple, hammered gold, with a small, round opal set into the band. Not flashy, not loud, just luminous. "I don't need perfect," he said. "I need you. Will you marry me, Vera?" She stared at him, tears welling in her eyes, but not falling. Then she took the ring and slipped it on her finger. "Yes," she whispered. He stood slowly, and she pulled him into a kiss that was neither rushed nor tentative. It was the kind of kiss that sealed things, that made promises. They held each other until the wind picked up and the city lights blinked, fully awake. The soft opening the next day overflowed with locals, tourists, and old friends. Vera's former co-workers from New York surprised her with flowers. The couple from the first day came back for more lemon tarts. A food critic left with frosting on his chin and a stunned look on his face. Ash worked beside her all morning, sleeves rolled, flour on his face, pouring espresso shots and plating pastries without complaint. At one point, she caught him sneaking a slice of vanilla bean custard tart. "That's the 4th one you've eaten," she said. "I'm conducting quality control. Your self-control is non-existent. I'm in love. I'm allowed to be ridiculous." That night, they locked the doors and collapsed onto the bench outside, side by side, her head on his shoulder. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked. "Miss what?" "The old life. The noise. The rush." He thought for a long moment. "No," he said, "because for the first time I'm not running from anything. I'm running towards something." She turned her face up toward him. "And what's that?" "You. Us. This." He kissed her forehead. "I want a future with arguments over flower brands and whose turn it is to clean the espresso machine." She laughed softly. "You're terrible at cleaning the espresso machine." "I'll get better." "You better." They sat in silence for a while, the illuminated sign above them casting soft golden light across the cobblestone street. From that day forward, their life was not perfect, but it was deeply, exquisitely theirs. They married in the garden of a friend's estate outside Lyon, surrounded by a handful of people they loved, the ceremony officiated by the same woman who had once handed Ash a free croissant. Vera wore a simple dress with embroidered roses down the sleeves. Ash wore a navy suit and no tie, his hair wind-tousled and his smile unguarded. They wrote their own vows shaky, hers fierce, and sealed them with a kiss that made even the photographer cry. The bakery flourished. They hired staff, expanded the menu, and added a second location in the Latin Quarter. But they never stopped working the counter. Never stopped holding each other's gaze across the kitchen. Never stopped choosing love in the middle of the chaos. Years later, when asked how they met, Vera would laugh and say he was barefoot and holding a croissant. And Ash would add, and she saved me before she even knew my name. And that would be the truth. Because sometimes the most extraordinary love stories begin with the simplest of accidents. And this one? It ended exactly where it was always meant to. Together. Always.